Proverbs 24, verse 30. Proverbs 24, verse 30. If you have the Bible, please turn to Proverbs 24, verse 30, 31. We're in the book of Proverbs. It's a 4-part series for the month of June. July will return to 1 Samuel. Proverbs 24, verse 30. It says, "And I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense. And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down." You see, often I go to Chanakyapuri and I have a friend there, and I often have lunch appointment with him. Now, whenever I have lunch appointment with him, I have to park my car a kilometer away because there is no parking space around where we meet for lunch. So when I finish my lunch, I walk back to my car, and while walking back to my car, I often pass by this affluent neighborhood where the houses are massive. 3-story, 4-story, 5-story houses, massive houses. Forget owning these houses. Just to pronounce the name of the car standing outside those houses, you need certain degree of sophistication and exposure. That's the condition of those houses. And when I pass those houses, these towering houses, suddenly I often come across this house. This house is a midget in front of those towering houses. This house is like a filthy old rag compared to those shimmering, shiny, and glossy houses. You look at this house, and in the front yard, you have weeds as tall as me. And the driveway has an old car parked. And to pronounce the name of the car, you need no sophistication. 3 syllables, Maruti. No offense. You see, I was intrigued to see that house. I'm always intrigued to see that house. I wonder often, why would you keep a house in that condition? If you can afford a land in this prime area, Chanakyapuri, and such a big land in this area, why would you not refurbish your house? Why would you not renovate your house? Why won't you do the patchwork? Why don't you finish it? Why does it lie in ruins? I'm sure that house had seen some days of glory, but those days are past. They're way behind now. They're gone past. Whatever it is, whatever the story behind that house is a sad story. And if I were to personify that house, and if I were to give that house an emotional state, that emotional state would be regret. A house filled with regrets. You see, a lot of people walk around with regrets in their lives. Christian alike. We are no different. Whether you are an 18-year-old or an 80-year-old. A couple of weeks ago, Class 12 examinations results came out. Last week, Class 10 examination results came out. I'm sure a lot of students are regretting. Next week and a few weeks later, the civil results will come out, and people will regret, some of them. We all have regrets. Longer the life, more the regrets. And regrets are often about what I could have done. What I could have done. I could have been a better parent, a better father, or a better mother. I could have been a better spouse. I could have been a better employee to establish my testimony. I could have shared the gospel with my family or my friend before they're gone. I could have done this. I could have done that. I could have been a respectful daughter or son. We all have regrets, don't we? No matter who you are sitting here, you all have regrets. You see, I recently went to a conference. This conference was about equipping professionals in marketplace. And the plenary speaker, he said, okay, turn around and pair up and discuss with your partner what is the biggest regret of your life. So here I was, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so many regrets in my life. And this guy who turns around and says to me, I have no regret in my life. I'm like, wow, man, you must be perfect. He's like, no. He says, the thing is, I firmly believe that God works together everything for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. I'm like, brilliant philosophy. I went home and I kept thinking about it. I'm like, Lord, is that for real? Is that true? If that is true, that means we can just wash away our hands from everything that we have done wrong, and we say, Lord, you anyways are going to work everything together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose, Romans 8:28. And the answer is no. You cannot do that. You see, while God in his benevolence, while God in his faithfulness picks up the bits and pieces that you throw, and he still uses it for your good, to transform you into the image of Christ. But at the same time, he calls you to excellence. Why? Because he is the definition of excellence. We bear his image. Therefore, we are called for excellence. Not wash away our hands from whatever we have done wrong. He calls us for excellence. We are called to emulate Christ. We are called to be salt and light, distinct people. We are called for excellence. A life of a Christian is characterized, or to be characterized, by excellence. God calls us to be the best we can be and the best we can do, given the resources, given the opportunities. Ecclesiastes 9:10, the teacher says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with your might. The word might there has this idea of physical best and intellectual best. If I would rephrase it, the teacher is saying, whatever is set before you, whatever your hand finds to do, whatever you put your hands in, whether it is parenting, whether it is marriage, whether it is work, whether it is faith, do it with the best of your physical and intellectual ability. Excellence. Go down to New Testament, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. Paul is about to die. He's writing his last epistle. He writes it to Timothy, his disciple. And this is what he says to Timothy in chapter 2, verse 15. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. He says, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Paul is commanding Timothy to be zealous, to be passionate, to be eager to present yourself as the one whom God approves. He says, if you rightly handle the word of truth, if you rightly divide the word of truth, if you handle the word of truth with integrity, you have no reason to be ashamed as a worker before God. You see, Timothy's job, his vocation was teaching and preaching. And therefore, Paul says, rightly handling the word of truth. Now, whatever your vocation is, whether you're a student, whether you're a professional, you're a housewife, you're a retired person, you can extend the principle to your life. Whatever you are called to do it with all your integrity. So when you put these two verses together, Ecclesiastes 9:10 tells you about doing the best you can do with all your strength, that is physical, all your intellect, that is mind. And 2 Timothy 2:15, Paul says, do whatever you can do it with the best of your integrity, character. Excellence. Excellence. You see, most people in this world focus on one over the other. Either it's character or it's competency, skill. But since you are called to be salt and light, since you are called to be a distinct people, a royal priesthood, 1 Peter chapter 2, a holy nation, a treasured possession of God, you got to pursue excellence. Because when you pursue excellence in your life, people take notice of it. People see you as a distinct people group. And they connect the dots. But the problem is that most of us don't end up being excellent or pursue excellence. Either we pursue excellence in one area over the other, or we settle for mediocrity, or we settle for something far less. So this morning I want to look at two things. I want to look at what is excellence. I want to define excellence. And I want to look at what does it look like? What does excellence look like? You see, excellence, let me define excellence for you, okay? This is the moment of truth. Excellence is walking the path that Christ has set for you. That's simple. If you are looking for a complicated, convoluted definition, I don't have one. Excellence is walking the path that Christ has set for you with all your heart, integrity, character, with all your intellect, mind, with all your strength, body. Excellence is nothing but following the path that Christ has set for you. Excellence is obedience with all your heart, mind, and strength. That's excellence. You see, we often equate excellence. Let me tell you two things about excellence. All right, let me clear two misconceptions about excellence. First is we often equate excellence with the rewards of excellence. We often equate excellence with accolades. We often equate excellence with finesse, with superiority, with awards, with rewards. But that's not excellence. Excellence does not equal its rewards. The second thing about excellence is excellence does not guarantee the desired outcome. Let me give you an example. You might be an excellent parent. All right? You are day and night praying with your children, praying for your children, teaching them whatever God has commanded you to do to the T. You're living an exemplary, godly life. But there is no guarantee that your son or your daughter will not walk away. Is there any guarantee? Does that mean that you've not pursued excellence? You have. You have done your best. You have given your best. But that does not guarantee the desired outcome. So excellence is not its rewards. Excellence does not guarantee the desired rewards. But what? You see, excellence is an attribute. Excellence is an attribute. Excellence is not a skill that you develop. Excellence is a character trait that you hone. And if it is an attribute, that means it's a part of who you are. If excellence is an attribute, if it is a character trait, then it is part of who you are. And if it is a part of who you are, then you cannot confine excellence to one part of your life. It's like if you're a just person. You can't say that I'm just only in this part of my life, but when it comes to this part, I'm unjust. If you're a loving person, his love is your attribute. You can't say, I'm only loving at workplace, but at home, I'm not loving. And therefore, excellence, if that is an attribute that you possess, which you do, let me tell you, good news. Then you can't confine excellence to one place and not take it to another. Excellence is an attribute which, if you possess, needs to permeate every area of your life. Every area of your life. Whether it is family, whether it is work, whether it is studies, whether it is faith. Every area of your life. Excellence is obeying God with the best of your strength, mind, and heart. So that's excellence. That's a definition of excellence, a very brief definition of excellence. The second question is, what does it look like? And that's where we get into the book of Proverbs. Last week we started the book of Proverbs, it's a 4-week series, as I said. Last week we looked at, Pastor Sandeep talked about the fear of God as the beginning of wisdom and the conception of wisdom. Proverbs forms a part of something called wisdom literature in the Bible. Now, the Hebrew word for wisdom, which is chokhmah, is used to define daily skillful living. This chokhmah, this wisdom from God that is there in the book of Proverbs, equips or empowers God's people for daily skillful living, for day-to-day decision, for day-to-day choices, and setting day-to-day priorities or priorities for your life. That's Chokmah, wisdom from God for daily skillful living. Now, Proverbs sets before us two paths when it comes to excellence. One path is a path of excellence, which is modeled and exemplified by an ant, and we're going to look at that. And the second path is the path of mediocrity, that is modeled by and exemplified by this person called Mr. Sluggard. Mr. Sluggard. Okay? So you've got ant exemplifying the path of excellence, and you've got Mr. Sluggard exemplifying the path of mediocrity. Now, a word of caution. All right? The prefix that I've used for sluggard is Mr. Now, that's not a dig at men. Women, you can add Miss, Mrs., Miss, whatever you want to do. Okay, I'm just going to call him Mr. Sluggard. So the path of excellence entails motivation. I'm going to look at what the path of excellence entails, looking at ant or the ant, and I'm going to look at the path of mediocrity, looking at the sluggard. The path of excellence entails self-motivation. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6. The author says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest." In these three verses, we're going to observe two things about this ant. The first thing we're going to observe is that the path of excellence entails self-motivation. You see, this ant that the author is talking about, he says this ant does not have any boss, does not have any commander, does not have any ruler. Yet this ant goes about her work, finishes her work, and is faithful and diligent towards her work. This ant is very self-disciplined. This ant is very self-motivated. There is no one on this ant's head telling this ant to get out of the bed, to dress up, to go to work hard, to stop or not to stop. There is no one telling this ant what to do, yet this ant is doing what she is supposed to do. You see, this ant has enough motivation within her to do whatever she wants to do with her life and to make the best out of her life, and she never lets up. This ant works hard because she understands her role and her purpose in the colony, and yet strives to fulfill it with the best of her ability. There's no one telling this ant, you've got to do this, you've got to do this much. Wake up, do this, do that. But still, this ant does it. You see, on the other hand, the path of mediocrity entails external motivation. Verse 9, drop down to verse 9. The author rebukes and questions the sluggard. He says, "How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep?" The author is questioning this sluggard, Mr. Sluggard, who's also known by the name Mr. Lazy, Mr. Slothful. Okay, those are AKA, slothful and lazy. So he's asking Mr. Sluggard, how long are you going to warm the bed? When are you going to get up from your slumber and get to work? You see, I really like the New Living Translation and Jewish translation. It says, "How long will you lie there, lazy bones?" That's brilliant, lazy bones. My wife Janice, okay, she loves running. Okay, every now and then she runs a marathon. She needs no motivation. You know, she loves to pay and run. I'm like, honey, you can just run. Why do you pay and run? But anyways, that's beyond the point. So she runs, and I don't have to tell her. Nobody has to tell her, Janice, come on, get up, 6 a.m. in the morning, go out for a run, come back, or you've come tired from work, don't go for a run right now. No, she's motivated. The motivations come from within. And she runs every now and then, whenever she wants to. But when it comes to me, it's a different ball game altogether. Janice has to literally push me out of the house to run. I still somehow find my way back. Recently, she conned me into running a marathon. It was not running, I'm exaggerating, it was walking. My 4-year-old daughter did better than me. And she told me, honey, look, I want you to run. And what I have done is I've already paid for you. So you have to run now. I'm like, all right. You see, the thing is that you might have someone over you constantly pushing you, constantly motivating you, constantly encouraging you to do something. But the thing is, if your motivation is externally stimulated, if someone else is motivating you constantly to do something, that means what you are being motivated to do is not going to last long. I ran that marathon 2 months ago, and since then I've walked once. It's not going to last long. It's not going to last long because you don't love doing what you're doing. And if you don't love doing what you are doing, you will never give your best to it. You will never follow the path of excellence. Never. You see, if you're externally stimulated, if you're externally motivated to do something, you're doing it either out of obligation, you're doing it either out of necessity, you're either doing it out of fear, or finally, you are either doing it out of pressure. Look at your life right now. If you have no motivation to do what you're doing, the reason is either of these four or all of them. You see, the passion and the motivation to do something comes from a very deep conviction that what you're doing is good, what you're doing is right, what you're doing is important, and add the calling element to do, you're called to do it. If you don't have this conviction, what you're doing perhaps is out of necessity, fear, obligation, or pressure. You see, and once you love what you're doing, you don't need a boss over you to tell you, or someone to externally motivate you like the ant. The question is, what are you doing? You would say, I'm preparing for civils. No, what are you doing really? What are you doing? What is the purpose of what you're doing? Is that making any difference to anyone? Is that making any difference to the ethos, to the ideology, to the culture of the city? Are you making any inroads? What are you doing? Dig deep and see, what are you really doing? And you'll find an answer. Probably you'll find a motivation in that. Look for meaning and purpose in what you're doing. Don't just do it because you have to do it, because you will not do it for long, or you'll burn out soon. See, the path of excellence entails self-motivation. The path of excellence entails determination and vision. Verse 8, chapter 6, verse 8. Talking about the ant, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. This tiny ant, under the hot sun, she scurries and gets around to get the job done. The world is eating and making merry, and this ant goes around the table, picks the crumbs, takes it back to the colony, and makes sure that the job is done. I do not know if the ants sweat or not. If they do or don't, they don't care. They don't ask for promotion. They don't ask for overtime. They don't ask for bonuses. They just get the job done. You see, this kind of determination comes from the fruit of the labor. You see, no one loves to do hard work or labor just for the sake of it. Parents, you don't want to break your head with your children. You don't enjoy doing that just for the sake of it. you enjoy, or you go through that process of training and teaching them, that chaos you go through, because you see the fruit of it. You see the immediate fruit, and you see the long-term effect of that fruit. And hence you are motivated, determined to do whatever is required. You see, I don't love doing ministry just for the sake of ministry. I love doing pastoral work. I love teaching. I love preaching because of the fruit of it. The fruit it produces in me, and the fruit that it produces in people. You see, our mission is to cultivate Christ-centered communities. While we are cultivating these Christ-centered communities, there is this immediate fruit that you see in the lives of people when the lives of the people are transformed. And then you see a vision to see Delhi redeemed. And when these people, this immediate fruit, people, transform people, when they go into marketplace, when they go into schools, when they go into colleges, when they go into neighborhoods, and they start impacting ideologies, they start impacting ethos, they start impacting culture, slowly but steadily, that long-term vision, the lifelong vision comes to pass. My determination depends on my vision of today and vision of tomorrow. You see, when ant works, talking about this, verse 8, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. Why is she doing it? She knows the winter is coming. And in winter, they won't be able to do as much. So they have limited time period in harvest, and they gather as much as they can. Why do they work so hard in this heat? Because of the vision that they have. Immediate fruit, food, and the long-term vision. That when they'll starve in winter, they'll have something to sustain and provide for the colony. However, the path of mediocrity entails procrastination and complacency. Proverbs 26, verse 15. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. Proverbs 12:27, whoever is slothful will not roast his game, but the diligent man will get precious wealth. You see, there are two pictures here. The first picture is that food is put in front of the sluggard. He puts his spoon in the bowl and does not have the wherewithal to take it back to his mouth. Okay, he's so slothful. The second picture is he's done something, okay, he's worked, he's gone out of his comfort zone slightly. He hunted. The game is there, the meat is there right in front of him, but he doesn't want to roast it. He gets too tired just by the hunting part of it, that he doesn't want to complete this job. And you wonder, why such a degree of slothfulness? Why such a degree of slothfulness? And that is because of the lack of ambition in this person's life. Proverbs 26, verse 14 is a brilliant image. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. You know what is the point of comparison here? Have you seen a door? Hinge. Left, right, center. It moves in a limited space. Left, right, center. So is the sluggard on the bed. Left, right, center. See, the point of comparison here is that this sluggard is so comfortable in his small space, so content with whatever little he has, that he doesn't want to step out of the boundary. It's filled with hassle for him. He makes excuses. There is a proverb where the sluggard says, there is a lion in the street, there is a lion in the marketplace, where there is no lion. He's just making excuses. Why? He doesn't want to step out. He's so content with this little corner of his in his life that he doesn't want to step out. There is no ambition in his life. He doesn't want a change. He is happy and content in today, that tomorrow doesn't matter to him. The question is that wrong? Is that wrong to be content? Is that wrong to be happy in whatever you have? The answer is no. But do not confuse contentment with complacency. There is a difference. Contentment says, I have given my best. Today I have worked hard, I have given the best, given the scenarios and the situation and the resources and the opportunities available. But complacency says, I want to do bare minimum. Bare minimum, whatever I can go by, bare minimum. I don't want to improve, I don't want to do more than that, just the bare minimum. Whether it is family, whether it is work, whether it is church, bare minimum. That's complacency. You see, Jesus tells us a parable in Matthew 25, the parable of talents. Jesus, the master goes on a journey and he gives 1, 2, and 5 talents respectively to 3 of his servants. And when he comes back, this one servant to whom he gave 1 talent, he was content with 1 talent. He did not do anything about it. He was satisfied with what he had. And the other 2 were industrious, and so they multiplied. And when the master comes back, he rebukes this one servant who was content with his 1 talent. You see, there's a difference between contentment and complacency. Complacency is going by with bare minimum. I've got a government job, that's it, I've arrived. My job is to come to church on Sunday, that's it. I leave my faith there. My job is to bring presents for my kids. That's it. Put them in front of a television. That's it. Bare minimum. That's complacency. You see, when we live our lives in the light of eternity, our paradigm changes. Our what and why of existence gets redeemed, gets renewed, gets transformed. Suddenly there is this new motivation to live. There is this new reason to do whatever we are called to do. Suddenly my 9-to-5 mundane job has this new meaning to it. Everything that I do it for the glory of God. Suddenly I see a plethora of opportunities around to share the gospel with people, to be the best where I can be. So I started equipping myself. I start working on my skill. I try to be the best that I'm called to be, whether in a call center or in armed forces, wherever you are. Suddenly there's a new meaning. Your marriage, which is dull and dry, suddenly gets this fresh breath of air when you realize that your marriage is not just fulfilling each other's needs, that your marriage has a purpose much beyond that, that it's a vehicle to exalt Christ in a culture where marriages are abused, where marriages has no love left in them. And when you live that exemplary married life with love and submission, people take note of it. There's a new meaning, there's new freshness. Love and submission takes on a new meaning. We start capitalizing, maximizing every opportunity that comes our way when our perspective is redeemed, when our what and why of existence is redeemed. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was all overgrown with thorns, the ground was covered with nettles, and its stone walls was broken down. The author goes on and he says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and the poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. Now, this kind of ruin doesn't come immediately. Whether it is the ruin of life or of the house, it's brick by brick by brick. Little folding of the hands, little slumber, little hands to rest, or little folding of the hands to rest, a little sleep. And the poverty will come upon you like a robber as a surprise. and will destroy you. Ray Ortlund says this in his book. The book's title is Lord, Make My Life a Miracle. He says, your danger and mine is not that we become criminals, but rather that we become respectable, decent, commonplace, mediocre Christians. We don't become criminals. The 20th century temptations that really sap our spiritual power are the television, banana cream pie, the easy chair, and the credit card. I would add to it, the 21st century temptations that really sap our spiritual power is internet, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, plethora of opportunities, easy money, relativity. The Christian wins or loses in those seemingly innocent little moments of decision. You see, mediocrity and Christian worldview are incongruent. The Lord says to the church in Laodicea, He says, because you're not hot or cold, hot water is useful, cold water is useful. Because you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. Because you're mediocre, I'll spew you out of your mouth, out of my mouth. You see, there is a sluggard in each one of us. There is excellence in each one of us because we are redeemed. We are made in God's image. We are His image bearers. The question is, which one are you feeding the most? Mediocrity and excellence without Christ leads to regrets. Excellence with Christ leads to contentment. Paul says in Corinthians chapter 1, he says Christ has become God's wisdom for us. Christ is God's chokhmah for us. His path is the path of excellence. His path is the path of wisdom that leads to eternal life, that leads to the pleasure of God, that leads to the exaltation of Christ, that leads to people connecting the dots, that leads to you realizing your full potential. Mediocre people don't realize their full potential because everything is mediocre. Excellence with Christ leads to contentment. Let's pray.